Hello everyone, and welcome to the project file of My Dearest Zero. This was a mashup that was submitted as a request on one of the live streams on West, and this is the only request that has ever made it to the main channel. So out of years of doing live streams and stuff, it was thanks to DJ Sonata for recommending Less Than Zero that I was able to kind of put together this mashup. The first one was very rudimentary, and I actually have the moment where the combination was discovered on stream, so I'm just going to play it back. It's such a nice moment. Hands him Squidward. Oh, there it is. There's the combination. Yeah, so it's extremely rare. Actually, I've never had one of those combination discovering moments archived before, so it's just super awesome that I was able to put that together. So this was kind of a birthday gift for DJ Sonata because it was his birthday that same night. And from there, when it came to putting together my set, The Good Loser, I had all of these tracks that I wanted to include, and the red were songs that were on the cutting block. And what do you know, My Dear Zero was one that, you know, I was like, oh, it's not that good, but then I ended up putting it in there because of recent developments in kind of instrumental extraction and vocal extraction. So my weapon of choice typically for this one would be just Utagoe, or Utagoe, however you'd like to pronounce it. However, I realized that Utagoe wasn't enough because the vocals weren't that clean this time around. I'm not sure what they did, but I wasn't able to phase invert it that cleanly. So I was able to use Utagoe to effectively remove a lot of the instrumental. And then I used this software called Demucs. And Demucs was used to clean the vocal further, and that's an AI extraction software. And then from there, I got the audio file and I brought it into Izotope, and it's really cool. Like, you can use spectral repair, and you can look at all the frequencies, and you can find which areas have a frequency that you don't really like, and it just takes a lot of listening over and over again to find what frequency you're not looking for, and to like absolutely scrub it out. So like, let's say I didn't like this particular frequency, I could attenuate it to make it quieter. Anyways, so there was that, but the biggest thing that was limiting me from making this mashup a thing was the fact that I didn't have a clean instrumental, and it's an absolute shame that it took so long. But I ended up sitting on this combination for like well over a year. I think it's like over 500 days now. January 22nd, 2022. And what do you know, there's an account called the Weekend Access, and that account was able to upload the official instrumental of Less Than Zero, which is just absolutely bonkers. That, you know, not only did we get like better vocal extraction methods and the official instrumental, I felt that was a sign to actually put the whole mashup together. So we're actually going to go into the project file now. It's very typical. Start off with the instrumental. The kind of goal for this mashup was to kind of create a very chorus-focused mashup. Nothing that would appear too fancy on the surface, but something that just sounds great overall. And I still like the way this mashup sounds despite listening to it hundreds of times. So in terms of the vocals, I'm just going to mute the instrumental. I'm just going to go into vocals. I have different layers of acapellas, and one of my kind of design choices for this was to have different delay sequences for the vocals. So it wouldn't just be, you know, always a quarter or always a half delay. Sometimes it actually goes for a full, you know, a full segment or a half or a quarter. So it would actually vary. So those are just to fill the space, and it's just a lot of kind of fine tuning. the volume. There's some that's like more in your face, and some that's kind of behind, like kind of tucked away a little bit. But it just creates more variation in the delay sequence. We're gonna go here, so there's just a little bit more kind of different delay stuff. So yeah, just a lot of delay stuff. And then we're gonna go into the first chorus. One thing that I should say now before I forget, I'm dealing with another situation where the instrumental is quite centered and the vocals are also quite centered in the stereo field. It's kind of a similar thing that happened with Be My Hero, where the vocals were quite centered and the instrumental was centered. In this one, it's kind of the same thing. So instead of actually putting a blanket stereo separation on the instrumental, which would make it sound a little bit muddy, I used some areas where if I wanted things to kind of narrow down or open up, I would just kind of automate that. So going before the first chorus, it kind of goes a little bit centered and then it hits you with this width of sound. Even when it comes to handling the vocals, here's like, okay, it's at the stereo separation's normal, but then it gets a lot wider in the chorus. Another thing, when the vocal extraction software was lifting the vocals, the backing vocals are baked into the instrumental, which not only does it make the extraction messier, but that means I had to use AI to completely extract the vocals here. So I had to use AI on the instrumental and AI on the Utagoe export and all that stuff. Some wacky stuff with the original instrumental is that there's actually small little pops in the instrumental. So there were some areas where I had to take the instrumental and like clean it out using Spectral Appear and Izotope. It was pretty wacky. And because the vocals were also really messy, I had to do like a little bit of volume automation for like every single, every word that I felt needed to either be boost or made a little bit quieter. Some people will use a limiter. Limiters are fine. I just like to have, to preserve that that dynamic range of it all. Moving into, after the first chorus, we have the kind of part, well, the first pre-chorus. We move on to the actual first chorus, and what I did was I wanted to have the lead be mine. So typically the lead follows the less than zero vocals, and so I recreated it in a separate project file, and it kind of sounds like this. So I can't remember how I did that. I think I smooshed like 3 synths together. I did some research, and apparently that the synth that they typically used for a lot of the Weeknd songs, it produced on this kind of old-fashioned machine, and it's super expensive. So I'm just like, okay, let me take these silent synths and Serum and honestly, it's been so long. This is February 26th of this year, so 5 months ago, I don't know, I figured that out. To make space for the synths, I do this thing. It's kind of a similar approach that I did for Color Washed, where it's like, okay, the kick drums keep the same volume as everything else, but all the other instrumentation ducks a little bit. That just gives it a little bit of breathing space. One thing is like, why didn't I sidechain the lead? It's because the original one didn't, and when you start sidechaining something that to a kick drum that isn't that heavy, and the kick drum is kind of light in this song, then it just feels like, a little bit kind of mismatched, and timing wise it doesn't feel like it works out because of that scooping. I have this recording when the Weeknd performed Less Than Zero at Sophie Stadium. There's a crowd cheering at the end, so I decided to sample it. I don't know. I like to use crowds instead of like cymbal crashes and everything, just because I don't know. It feels more lively. Anyways, so all together with the instrumental, the kind of ducking, the crowd vocals, the acapella, the backing. Oh, you know what? Shit, I forgot about the backing vocoder. So, um, Less Than Zero has these chords that play throughout the song. So what I did was I took the chorus and I vocoded it to the chords of the song. And the reason why I did that is because I wanted to add a little bit of body. A lot of the Weeknd songs, I think in the previous album, he used a lot of vocoder. So with the vocoder and all, I just thought that it was thematically a good fit, and also filled up the space on the low end as well, or else the vocals would have stayed kind of airy. So this is what it kind of sounds like. Oh, and I also sidechained this one. What I'm going for here was texture. I didn't want the kind of vocoder to interfere with the kind of dynamic range of the of Less Than Zero. So it sounds like this. So chances are, when you first listen to this mashup, you probably didn't hear it, but it's a very different feeling if you have that there versus you don't have that. So if you have headphones on, this is what it sounds like without the vocoder. And then with the vocoder, pay attention to the low end. It gives a little more body. Even if you didn't hear that, just trust me. I feel like it it gives a little bit of body. And I said that twice. Here, you can kind of hear it trail off. This is without. And with. Yeah, so it's just all about that ear feel. Here we got a reverse reverb, nothing fancy, to bring us into the second verse. Now the second verse, you know, this is a very vocally dense song. Vocals hold your hand throughout the whole mashup. So it's kind of like, how much room do I have to play with things? And the kind of approach here was to have the delay do different kind of panning effects. So originally, like the first verse didn't have any panning effects, but this one has panning effects and it has different like delay sequences. And also there's a little bit of a tucked away delay to give it a little bit of texture. So a little bit of texture, and then this part, like to show you what this sounds like. So that's kind of how I'm creating that width, that stereo width with the vocals. I thought that was really nice. I'm gonna play that again. So this is just a walkie-talkie effect, hard pan to the right ear. So, and the reason why is so that I could bring the this little thing in the background on the left ear. Just to give it a little bit more difference. This particular string of melodies is actually what the guitarist plays in the live version of it. I just ran it through like a Nexus sound, and that's what I got. And then here, leading into the second pre-chorus. I really like this sound. I have no idea how I extracted and made this. And then this is like reversed, and then this is, what is this? Whoa, that's wacky. Honestly, I don't remember how I made that. It's been so long. For this part right here, I go and play the counter melody of the original My Supercell song. So this is the melody. Okay, yeah, it's a bit of a mess. A whole bunch of different sounds going all over the place. So yeah, if you listen to the original song, you'll hear this counter melody when the pre-chorus is in. And I hard pan that to the right ear. The reason why is so that, if someone's trying to focus on it and like hear like, oh, there's the melody, all they need to do is focus on the right ear instead of it getting kind of lost in the center channel. I have a little bit of like a less than zero excerpt. So I'm just going for texture there, and even though it's not the cleanest, I'm just going for, it gets hidden well enough through all the sounds that are going on. Yeah, so thanks Tiff for for recommending to put a little bit of weekend vocals in there. Here we have this kind of chant that I kind of, I don't know, sequenced. The chanting, it was originally like a strategy that I kind of discovered for passcode 999, where it's like, oh, if I take a vocal and I run it through like heavy reverb, distortion, and like OTT and a vocoder, that it creates a wacky sound that makes a chant. But I found that, you know what, I'm gonna make it like, I'm just gonna go the kind of more straightforward route and use the actual crowd themselves from the live concert. This idea kind of came in a little bit later. One thing that how I kind of got this idea was in Madian's "Love You Back." There's a part where like a what is it? Like a crowd like says like "Hey" in the background. I could be wrong about that, but I know it's in "Love You Back." But I just found that this helped to fill the space and lead into a bigger crash into the final chorus. So yeah, so that's the sound. So it just fills up the space a little bit. So to make the second chorus feel a little bit more different than the first one, I wanted to have a bigger crash. Now, before when I was handling the crash, it kind of felt like a little bit weak, and it just like kind of assumed the place of white noise. But then I decided, you know what, I'm gonna make the crowd really loud at the last chorus, louder than what I would normally be comfortable with. I was listening to this song called, I think, Revive by Youlean, and it was just a cool thing where at the climax it's like it hits on the 2 and there's this huge crowd. Anyways, so I tried to get that kind of effect, and then it sounds like so, and then more kind of that backwards, no, what, inverts sidechain. I gotta give a name to that. I have no idea. Ducking? I don't know. Anyways, to make the second chorus different, I changed the counter melody lead. Originally, I had it such that, it was the original less than zero lead, which sounded like this. But that was like baked into the instrumental. So you loop the instrumental and then you just pretty much get the pre-chorus and just drop it here. But it was through talking with Nas, he was like, "Yo, if you're gonna do that, like actually go in on it and really try to make it the best it can be." And like it took like probably 2 months before I kind of settled on this lead. Anyways, so the lead plays the counter melody. So if you listen to My Dearest, really, really far in the background, the piano plays this counter melody. I don't expect anyone to catch it, but for the people who know less than zero, it's like, oh, I know the melody on the first part, and then when they get to the second part, it's like, wait, did the melody change? That's the kind of feeling that I want. So it sounds like this. So yeah, that's the counter melody, and with all things combined, and I also loop the weekend vocals here again for the last part of the chorus. So ultimately, it sounds like this. So, you might be wondering, well, actually, no, you're probably not wondering this at all. Why didn't I just make the vocal really wide? Like, I could have really made my Dearest have these big room weekend vocals. The reason why is because first off, my Dearest doesn't really have too much vocal layering going on. It was pretty dry vocal, and it was just the one singer. And even if you listen to the original My Dearest, the vocals actually tucked away behind quite a bit of instrumentation, and also to hide how messy it would have been, how messy the extraction, even after all the cleaning, there's still some kind of undesirable sounds that I've mastered the instrumental. If I made it a lot wider and I made the reverb a lot bigger, it would have washed out everything. And kind of one of my critiques for how the way Less Than Zero was mastered. I mean, it's mastered by an absolute professional audio engineer, and I can't really knock it too hard. But I find that the vocals were very up there. They were very forward, and they were nice and atmospheric. But it was like the instrumentation was just kind of there to keep the tempo, and I just kind of wanted to make it balance the philosophies of mixing between the Western ideals and the Eastern ideals, where the Western will prioritize the vocals, whereas the Eastern also wants to bring all the other instrumentation there as well. So this was kind of a balance between all of it, and then achieving the stereo width and the kind of the reverb as well. A lot of these little clips here is just like delay automation, stereo separation. I could go on and on as to why I did it the way it is, but it's fine. The vocals go from really, really from wide to kind of something more centered. So it goes from. So it's like I cut the reverb there, and the reason why is because when she sings "I'm Yours," I want it to be like up close and personal. So it's like, after the climax is over, it's like the vocal comes to you. And let's hear it in context. Gives it a little bit more of an acoustic feel at the end of it all. And it transitions to the ending of the instrumental. So we have this nice guitar here. And the tricky thing is that the guitar just kind of ends on a weird count. In the original Less Than Zero, the vocals actually carry it beyond this. So I'm kind of like, okay, how do I end this properly? So it's just a series of a little bit of delay. What is this? A little bit of reverb, a little bit of volume automation to actually have it end on a last strum. So we're gonna play that right now. So instead of just being absolutely abrupt, I just kind of ended it on a last drum. The piano that you hear here is from the instrumental of My Dearest. So one thing that I like is that it's not perfectly timed, and I think that it gives a nice kind of syncopation in comparison with the guitar. So it seems like a lot more acoustic, and I'm totally fine if it's not landing perfectly. It gives more of a human touch. So it's on the because I hear more of the kind of the strum on the right ear, I decided to make the instrumental go a little bit to the left ear. But to kind of conclude it, I bring in this kind of wacky sound here, and I pan it to the right ear. And this is actually a part of the instrumental that I've reversed. So it sounds like this. Yeah, I don't know. I just thought like it was neat to end on something that's a little bit wacky instead of just like end the instrumental on, you know, a strum and the piano. So it sounds like this. Yeah, it gives a neat little effect. This vocal sample here. This is a little throwback to The Good Loser, because my dear in the set, and this comes quite late in the set. My Dear Zero comes in roughly, I think I think it's like the 40-something minute mark, and I transition it to Yasin Namorar by Tribalistas or Tribalistas. I'm not sure. I don't speak Portuguese. And every time this part played, I always heard that. I've always heard that, and I'm just like, okay, I gotta put a motif in there somewhere. And I originally tried playing this, you know, elsewhere in the project, but then I kind of settled on like, you know what, I'm gonna have it as an end, so the people who like know the set or know The Good Loser would be like, oh, look, there's a little bit of a sample there. Yeah, just a little Easter egg. So that's that in terms of the project file. This one, it's like, I think it's more straightforward than I'd say Be My Hero, but it took a lot of like tweaking here and there, like because it's a very sonically dense mashup. So it's kind of like, okay, I want to try balancing everything, and I was listening to another's, you know, devices, and you know, it's either the vocals were too loud or it's getting tucked away too much, and well, maybe it got too crowded here. I wanted everything to sit tastefully, and after I'd say maybe like 4 or 5 months of just like, you know, trying to get the vocal to sit right, I'm pretty happy with where it landed, and that's all I can really say about that. So for this particular mashup, I had a very specific goal for it. I wanted to do something that kind of ended an era. So The Good Loser was kind of like, you know, a new beginning of sorts. And as a result, I wanted to do something with the animation. Now, I always thought it was really cool when gacha games could make, you know, could make images move. There's a whole bunch of gacha games that do this with like live 2D. Actually, you know what? Even like VTubers, this is the kind of stuff they do. So I straight up got Spine, and I learned it from scratch. And the whole intent was to use it for this mashup and mashups moving forward. So I got Spine here. I'm not good at this by any means. I'm still learning, and ultimately, it's like you separate each individual like part, and you have to rebuild parts of it in Photoshop. This image actually came from a magazine scan. I think it came from an official art book, and as a result, the noise that you see on it is actually part of the either the scan or the magazine. And I did a lot of color correction, and you know, you had to split different parts of it, and that took a really, really long time. I'd say like on and off, it took probably like 3 months to split the image, and then the animation, learning it and implementing it, probably took around like, yeah, maybe like 2 to 4 months, I'd say. So each one of these arrows does something different. The goal was not to make it like super distracting, so that's why all the movements are really subtle. I've always been a fan of subtle visuals. I didn't want it to be distracting, but like everything here moves. Like this little this little part of a belt buckle, her mouth moves, this guy moves, even each individual finger moves a little bit. See the index finger, the thumb. She blinks. This is neat. It's just like mesh deformation. She actually breathes a little bit. Even this kind of like flowery lapel. The hair, every follicle of hair moves differently. So yeah, ultimately, you know, I'm just quite happy with how it turned out. This was the biggest thing that was holding me back, was the animation. And in the kind of process of learning the animation, there's like it's a pretty good software in that it's like it's fairly like this might look intimidating, but it's fairly easy to use once you like get the workflow of it. And then it's, well, I don't know anything about IK constraints and all that, but for my intents and purposes, I think that like this is like sufficient. I'm just gonna go into the artwork here and tell you a little bit about the artwork. Oh yeah, here was the original scan. So yeah, I had to cut, like this is what I had to work. I had to cut around everything and rebuild so much of the image. Oh my gosh, it was rough. Hey Peter. So here's the wallpaper. The color scheme of purple to kind of orange is seen in the Less Than Zero music video. They don't have an official music video, it's a lyric video, but the kind of purple to orange kind of motif makes its way, well, color palette, I mean, not a motif, makes its way through the whole thing. The background, I got it from a screenshot from one of the scenes in the anime. It's like a futuristic version of Tokyo or something. Straight up, I didn't watch the anime. I got to like episode 3, I'm just like, man, I don't know, I don't feel like watching this anymore. So, anyways, it's kind of a rare case where I go into a mashup where I don't really know fully the context or the source. All I know is that her name's Inori, she's like an idol, and I don't know, like they manifest and pull out like weapons from each other. I don't know. Anyways, so the nice thing about this is like I got the exact font that was used in the Less Than Zero music video. Even the font up here, like that's like dead on accurate. This little emblem thing I drew from scratch. This is the Guilty Crown logo, and yeah, this quote, I don't know. It doesn't really mean much to me. But I just feel like it goes hard. And yeah, they have little stars there, so I drew the little stars as well. So ultimately, that's the project file and the whole kind of thought process that was put into it. My perfectionist ways are always like every sound needs to sit exactly where I want it to be, and it takes a lot of iteration. So let's see how many files did I end up doing. Let's see, project file. Okay, I remember remaking this project file many times. So the newer one, I think I remade it from scratch in April 15, but I know that there were other versions. So like renders. So like the first like render that I was like, okay, this is kind of done-ish, was back in February 18. So after all the iterations, we finally arrived to July 10th, which is the final audio that I've settled on. Honestly, I can't think of what I would change. I just like the way it sounds. Sometimes mashups don't need to be difficult. Like even though like yeah, there's kind of a bit going on under the hood. From an outsider's perspective, the combination seems pretty straightforward, and I think the combination sounded great. So, I'm quite proud with this upload, and I've been kind of working on it off and on, and the reason why I guess it took so long was, I don't know, my mental health wasn't in the best state, stress from work and life, and a whole bunch of other changes in my life that I'm just like. It was kind of overwhelming, and this would often get pushed to the back burner. But because it got pushed to the back burner, that was also a source of stress. So it was through kind of like, coming to terms with myself and saying that, hey, not everything has to be perfect. It kind of helped in shaping my approach to mixing music. I know that in my memoir video, I always talked about like, I want to convince myself that I'm one of the greats, and that, I've people seem to think that I've achieved that status, but it was like all about convincing myself. And then for Be My Hero, I did feel like I had achieved that status, and I think that also The Good Loser was also like another magnum opus. But then I realized that instead of trying to chase after this thing that was way too, it was kind of egotistical, and I don't know, it didn't really, like, it brought me joy for a little bit, but it didn't really, like, it wasn't sustainable. So now instead of seeing myself as this person who, is this, like, this really good mashup artist, I consider myself now as just a participant. That, there are people that come before me, and there are people that will come after me. and I'm just one of those people that carries the torch and will pass it off. Well, well, I guess it's already being passed off as we speak, because mashups are still relevant, and people still mix music for fun, and they do it because they love it. So, yeah, that's just what's been going on, and honestly, I'm not sure how else to end the video. I will say though that before I used to put all of my eggs in one basket, in that like the audio was the only thing that mattered for me, and the visuals would kind of come second. This time I'm like treating the visuals and the audio as a joint responsibility. That kind of puts a little bit, it takes a little bit of pressure off of like, oh, everything has to be absolutely perfect. And to fuss over things, like, even though I ended up fussing on this one a lot, and I really should have been able to put this out a lot faster. I'm just glad that it's out, and that's about it. Also, the name My Dearest Zero, like, I had no idea what else to call it. I just thought it was a nice name. Okay, and I hope this recording wasn't too long. 36 minutes. Okay, it's under 40. I'm quite happy with that. Other project file walkthroughs, it goes way too long. So anyways, thank you for listening, and I have all of the audio stems, project file, music video, even the spine file. It's all in the kind of link in the video that's going to be uploaded soon. Whenever it comes to making stuff like this, I want to be like, I don't want to be secretive at all. Like, I want people to learn from, the stuff that I'm doing, to learn from it and make it better. And hopefully, this inspires someone, or maybe they can look into the project file and be like, oh, so this is how, HBJ handled this, and, and then they can put it in their own works. Yeah, that's another way. I like having things be accessible to people. Anyways, so that just goes into a glimpse of my thought process behind the mashup, and I'll see you all later. Take care.